Hello. I want to talk with you this evening about what I consider to be one big betrayal, a real brutal betrayal. And I'm going to talk to you about the truth behind Trump's budget bill. And I've spent a lot of time looking at it and reading lots of articles about it. So I want to share that with you because I think that I have a lot of things that I can say to you that would make it much more understandable. As you know, I always give my references. I have three major ones that I'm going to offer you this along with this podcast. But my name is Dr. Jackalyn, and I'm with DTP-Leadership Group. And this is Hot Topic Bold Talk. I want to introduce this podcast by saying it's an illusion of beauty. Trump is so proud of his branding his latest budget proposal, the one big beautiful bill. But what lies beneath the name is anything but beautiful. In reality, it's a cold, calculated attempt to reshape America by gutting healthcare, slashing food assistance like SNAP, removing climate protection, and enforcing permanent tax breaks for the wealthy, all at the expense of everyday Americans like you and me. What Trump couldn't dismantle outright in his first term, he's now seeking to destroy through the fine print of a budget bill. Americans are really needing to ask each of us, are we going to be okay with this? The answer for me is not. And we need to do something about this bill. So I'm not going to talk about the war between Iran and Israel and how we've joined it. I'm going to talk about the things that I think affect Americans every day. And I think Trump uses many things to dramatize stuff like a war like this to try to save his presidency. He wants us to get away from facing what this bill is like. And he does a lot of drama and chaos, so we won't pay any attention. So here's what I know that I've learned about this bill. Behind the closed doors, this bill is the following. It's an act of political theater and economic sabotage. Trump and his Republican allies are trying to fast-track a reconciliation bill that makes permanent the tax cuts from 2017, tax cuts that disproportionately benefit corporations and the ultra-rich. But here's the catch. You can't give big tax cuts unless something big has to go away. So what's being sacrificed? Programs millions of Americans rely on, like Medicaid, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, like SNAP, healthcare subsidies, Planned Parenthood access, and funding for client resilience. While the wealthy celebrate, struggling families are left working how they'll afford groceries, stay healthy, or even survive. I do not think this is governing. It's economic warfare against the most vulnerable. And worst of all, it's being rushed through under the guise of budget legislation, bypassing the full democratic process. The Congress is the one to declare war. Now, we do have actions with our military that we take, but the Congress has to discuss it and declare war. It's not the President of the United States. This could have been done appropriately, but it has not. An autocratic leader like Trump ignores anything, and he does what he wants. Now, one of the things that I know about this bill is the Byrd Rule is truly a procedural lifeline. And I'll admit I'm not a legal expert, but this is what I've read and the things I've understood, and so I've put it together. The Byrd Rule is there's one small chance to stop the worst parts of this bill. There's a powerful role known as in this process as the Byrd Rule, named after the late Senator Robert Byrd of West Virginia. The Byrd Rule restricts what can be included in the reconciliation bill. It limits them strictly to the budgetary matters. If a provision has only an incidental effect on the federal budget, it must be stripped out. That means it will fail to meet the Senate parliamentarian, Elizabeth McDodge, to determine what stays and what goes. Fortunately, she has already signaled some resistance in the past, such as when she struck down similar Planned Parenthood defunding efforts in 2017 by Trump. There's hope that she may again rule key provisions out of order, including, and here are some of them, a 10-year ban on state regulation of artificial intelligence, an outright attack on state sovereignty with no budgetary impact, language barring Medicaid patients from receiving care at Planned Parenthood, which again is an ideological process, not a budget reform. Trump has always been after Planned Parenthood because it pisses him off that they do provide abortions, but the reality is they provide a heck of a lot more health care than abortions. Another thing is that we'll see is that the provisions that limit federal judges' power by forcing plaintiffs to pay bonds before seeking injunctions is a direct attempt to hamstring civil rights legislation. If these provisions are removed under the Byrd Rule, it will be a victory for the rule of law in our country, but it won't undo the broader damage of this bill and this budget. Healthcare is on the chopping block. Perhaps the most destructive part of Trump's beautiful bill is what it does to healthcare. I have a lot of respect for, she's not in my state, but I have a lot of respect for Elissa Slotkin. And she describes the bill as this. This bill cuts a branch of programs we all care about, particularly healthcare, to pay for permanent tax cuts for the wealthiest tax brackets. Whether you have private insurance, Medicaid, or rely on emergency care, you will feel this bill. Please know that. Millions could lose coverage due to Medicaid cuts and more stringent work requirements. Those who remain insured will likely face higher premiums as hospitals try to absorb the cost of caring for the uninsured. This is a death by 1,000 cuts to Obamacare, a policy Trump has been desperate to dismantle over, and he tried it in his first term in office. He failed to repeal it outright, so now he's doing it piecemeal, under the radar, buried in hundreds of pages of budget language. The effect? Families skipping doctor's visits, rural hospitals closing because of it, seniors facing impossible choices between prescriptions and food, tax cuts for the wealthy. Let's look at it, because this is what's going to happen with this bill. The only Americans who truly win under the bill are those who least need it, at least need the help. The bill extends and expands Trump's 2017 tax cuts, offering permanent relief to corporations and individuals earning over $400,000 a year. But let's look at the trade-off. A recent Washington Post poll shows 63% of Americans opposed the bill when they learned it would increase the national debt by $3 trillion over 10 years. 66% opposed cutting food assistance programs. 61% opposed spending $45 billion on migrant detention centers. And now we know the Supreme Court has decided it's okay to send immigrants to the Sudan due to the support for the Supreme Court. So there's 61% that oppose spending $45 billion on migrant detention centers that Trump wants to build. Only 30% support extending tax cuts for corporations. Most shockingly, Trump has floated the idea of raising taxes on people making more than $2.5 million per year, an idea that has the majority support from both Democrats and Republicans, but his own party refused to include it in the final bill. Let that sink in. The wealthiest Americans are being protected while your health care, your food assistance, your children's school lunches, and your access to clean air and water are all on the chopping block. It is really gutting democracy and civil rights protection. Beyond dollars and cents, this bill also contains provisions that threaten the function of our democracy. For example, one clause would limit the power of the federal judges to hold the executive branch accountable. It would require plaintiffs, often civil rights groups, to post bond before a judge can issue an injunction against the government. This would dramatically reduce the number of successful legal challenges to unconstitutional action. I know for myself, I've never seen so much corruption and so much action that is illegal by Trump and his friends. And this is all no accident. It's part of a broader plan to weaken oversight and concentrate power in Trump's hands. These charges are buried in budget language, but have nothing to do with physical policy. They're about silencing dissent and neutralizing the judicial branch, which is the only one that's functioning and testing and refusing to accept a lot of things that Trump's doing. Now, we have a problem with the Supreme Court because they're going to go along with some of his things. But the rest of the judicial branch are fighting for you and me. We had 5 million people that marched on a Saturday. Trump had 150,000. They finally counted at his march for his birthday. Public opinion, Americans are not fooled. Despite Republican efforts to rush the bill through by July 4th, Americans are not buying it. According to the Washington Post, again, ISO poll, 42% oppose the bill overall, while only 23% support it. Among those who were actually heard the bill, 64% oppose it, nearly 2-to-1. 70% of Americans support raising taxes on individuals making $2.5 million or more. And 51% oppose ending tax breaks. They do not want, they oppose, hear me, 51% oppose ending tax breaks for clean energy. We're all going to die of the polluted aspects that we're having in our environment unless we start doing something. Our children are not going to live in a clean energy world in our country based on what's being attacked. Even Republicans are divided. 47% say a $3 trillion increase for our national debt is unacceptable. And that's the most alarming parts. Many Americans still don't know what's in this bill. That's the reason I'm doing this podcast about it. The bill is being pushed through fast with little fanfare. And we've got a war going on and anything else to detract us. And that's the reason I'm speaking about it. So we don't have time to react. That's what he's thinking. But those who are informed are making their voices clear. And that is one of the reasons I'm speaking about this bill. This bill is a betrayal of our values, our economy, and our future. So I want to conclude by saying this. We must not be silent. Trump's one big beautiful bill is not beautiful. It is a brutal betrayal of working families, of sick and elderly, of children and the poor, and of the very principles that should define our democracy. This is not just a budget bill. It is a blueprint for cruelty. It is the weaponization of physical policy to punish the vulnerable and reward the powerful. And if we remain silent, it will become the law of the land. We must not let that happen. Now is the time for each of us to speak, to educate, to organize, to call our senators and demand they reject this bill, because this country belongs to all of us, not just the wealthy, not just the connected, and not just the powerful. We are the majority, and we must act like it. Now that's what I have to say about this bill. There's also something else I want to share this evening in this podcast. And I want to share it with you because there's some changes that have happened. And so I want to talk with you as listeners. As many of you know, each episode of Hot Topic Bold Talk is written with deep purpose and dedication to uncovering the truth behind today's most urgent political issues. After releasing this week's powerful episode on Trump's so-called one big bill, I want to share something personal that I plan to do. It's time for me to take a break. These episodes are not easy. I'm sure you know, because listening to them could also not be particularly easy, but they're valuable. The work I've done alongside of all of you, because you inspire me to write and then talk about the things that are most meaningful and also the things that are most damaging to us. Now, this summer, I've decided to step away from podcasting for a few months to tend to some important transitions I need to make in my business and give myself time to rest and reflect. This is not goodbye. Far from it. I will be back in the fall with renewed energy, new ideas, and a continued commitment to truth, justice, and bold conversations. Until then, I encourage you to revisit my past episodes, stay informed, and never forget that you have a voice that matters. I want to thank you for walking on this path with me, and I will see you soon in the fall. I want to say I feel grateful, and this is from Dr. Jackalyn Rainosek. Thank you for listening.